All right, Kyle Mohan Racing, and tonight we're talking about cooling, trying to chill, basically keeping a Formula Drift car reliable, which is partially related to keeping them cool. A few people have asked, we've been doing some tech talks, and a question that's come up is how do we keep 1,000 horsepower cool? How do we cool our Formula Drift cars? And I think it's a great topic. So we're going to talk a little bit about our cooling setup. There's a couple things to keep in mind. Obviously, with Formula Drift cars, we are up against specific rules. So some of our cooling designs are relative to the rules of our series and as well to our needs. So I think there's a lot of good advice here and a lot of good information, but you'll probably need to apply what we've learned to your own given situation. So when you're running 1,000 horsepower 3-rotor, 30 pounds of boost with a nitrous system, and you're not just trying to make one pass down the quarter mile or half mile or one lap or whatever your situation may be. In drifting, we have a lot of idle time, and then we'll have multiple passes back to back. Sometimes as many as a normal battle would be 2 passes. A one more time can be 4 passes, and if you have the luxury of having to do 2 one more times, you can have to do 6 battles all in a row. And when you're making that type of horsepower, trying to sustain that type of cooling at high RPM, full throttle, what drifting is, can be very difficult. So within our setup, you can see it's not specifically traditional. We don't have a radiator up front. All of this cooling is relative to the oil system, twin Mishimoto double bypass oil coolers with ECU controlled fans, and then a Spareco excessively large intercooler keeping our air charge cool. Up here it continues. This is our power steering cooler. And this is actually a NOS spray bar. Instead of purging out the hood or somewhere fancy and cool like I do like to do, we've opted now to spray the NOS onto our intercooler, so in between passes we can freeze the intercooler back down, which does help kill some of our heat transfer and heat buildup that does happen in between runs. So you can see we're really focused in the front on primarily keeping our intake air charge cooled down, water injection spraying, NOS chilling, large intercooler, and then secondarily we're really trying to cool down our oil. And I think this is something a lot of people don't realize is a rotary motor, the rotors are oil cooled, so it's a motor that's both water cooled with water jackets similar to a piston motor, but then also oil cooled. So you've got to have substantial on both. I think in reality it's harder to cool a 3-rotor than it is your typical LS motor horsepower to horsepower. Something to consider. Obviously we want fresh air to our intake charge that's coming in through the hood. And if we take ourselves to the back of the car, which we've got apart right now, the whole car is coming apart, going back together, coming apart, going back together. That's what we do in the off season. We've got our excessively large radiator. I didn't want to really go with a custom-made radiator, so instead we opted for a off-the-shelf Mishimoto that's actually out of a diesel truck. We just looked at their dimensions online, matched our dimensions to what we needed as a necessity, and then relocated it to the back of the car. Now, I think there's actually been some talk within Formula Drift recently about rear mount radiators versus front mount radiators. And I think, it really depends on the car and what kind of engine they're running. I know there's some V8 cars out there and piston cars that could easily fit a radiator up front. And then I know there's other piston cars out there that just simply don't have the room. And I think it's unique that, within the rotary world, here I have a traditionally original rotary car, and we've only added one rotor, and we really don't have a lot of room to add more cooling to the front. And one of the rules we do have to deal with in Formula Drift is no side-mounted oil coolers. because we don't want to oil down the track. So in our case, we do our best job of cooling down intake and oil in the front. And then from a roof scoop, coming down in the back with an electric water pump, Mazier, to a large radiator with twin ECU controlled fans, a 16-inch puller and a 14-inch puller, both Mishimoto's. We're actually able to cool this car down, run after run, or even during operation, so we're able to sustain temperatures below 230 degrees, which is our cutoff point. I don't like to see oil temp or water temp in excess of 230. At that point, we're starting to do damage. Ideally, we're keeping everything right around 200. So there's some cooling tips. It's how we're getting it done on our Formula Drift car. Big radiator, probably, I'd say roughly 3.5 to 4 gallons of water, at least in this system. And then about 2 gallons of oil in our dry sump system, with things mounted specifically to the Formula Drift rules and to our cooling needs. Dry sump tank in the back. So if anybody has questions, definitely communicate, let us know. That's a little cooling talks and tech talks with KMR. It's not a TikTok, don't get confused. It is a technical talk. Kyle Mohan Racing, Facebook. This will get reposted on the YouTube, so make sure you're following all of our channels. And we'll keep answering those questions and talking about our setups. Have fun. Make sure to do rotary stuff and not knock things over like I just did. Oh well.